Hey guys, Andy here from Mediocre Hobbies coming at you with another hobby tutorial. This time we're going to be working on the beautiful new orc sculpt for Snikrot. He is absolutely magnificent and I cannot wait to show you guys how I got him painted up quickly and efficiently and on the table tip. We have to of course give our condolences for one colossal mistake the sculptors made with this miniature, and that is of course removing the shushing hand. Whoever made that decision, for shame. Before I get into the video, I just want to say a huge thank you to all of my active patrons. Without you guys, I would not be able to keep the lights on and the cameras rolling. If you're interested in joining my Patreon, the benefits include things like a private Discord server and, of course, an extra video every single week. So that's 52 extra videos a year. There has never been a better time to get involved. And this is himself, Snikrot, one of the coolest orc characters to ever have been introduced into the lore. His backstory is absolutely immense and the new model is fantastic. The exploding smoke grenade may be one of the coolest details ever added to a model in the last. So the model was sprayed black and then given a coat of Grey Seer, and then we moved over to Plaguebearer Flesh to base coat the skin. Plaguebearer Flesh has become one of my favorite green contrast paints for so many different things, but for orc skin it really is fantastic because it does hold a really nice deep rich green tone, but it's definitely got more natural tones in it as well, which suits skin down to the ground. It's also dark enough that when it's in the recesses and all the shaded areas of the skin, it settles in beautifully and works perfectly. So for me it's the best base coat for orc skin. Basilicanum Grey was then used for his trousers and a lot of his backpack detail. This guy is painted in somewhat of an urban camo, so greys and blacks were used for his fatigues, clothes and belts, just to make him blend into those kinds of surroundings, which works a treat for me as my orc army is also based on grey bases and to fit in with an urban theme, so he will fit into my army perfectly. When you look at Snikrot at first, he does seem like quite a daunting miniature. There seems to be a lot of detail crammed into him, but it actually breaks up really well and it's not difficult to paint whatsoever. Once you do something like get all the grey on the backpack, all the other details on the backpack suddenly kind of jump out at you. Gorgrunter fur was then used for all of the belts and straps. Not all of the belts and straps, just a couple of them. Things that hold on the belt, or the dagger on his backpack, the handle of that knife, and the handle of some of his stick grenades and stuff. Most of his belts are actually black. That knife has me rattling around in my brain as to what it is, why he has a third knife, and the one on his back seems to be more ornate than the ones in his hand, and I'm wondering if there's a backstory there. Black Templar is then the contrast used for all the rest of the belts, so all the straps holding on his backpack around his waist, and other details like that are done with a quick coat of Black Templar. Like I said, as you can see, the black is done, the brown is done, and all of a sudden there doesn't seem to be too much crazy detail on the model. You can see that the rest of it is pretty much a bit of rope and mostly metallics, so it's very easy to know where the colors are going to go. Skeleton Horde was then used for all of the rattling skulls between his legs. And then, of course, I also did the rope on his backpack the same color as well. I just gave that a quick coat of Skeleton Horde. I honestly don't know where we would be without contrast paints. And if you are someone that's sitting at home now watching this and you do not use contrast paint, even if it's just like me, to base coat your miniatures really fast, I seriously think you're missing out. It doesn't have to be specifically contrast. Army speed paints, express paints from Vallejo. Army paint. There's so many different ones these days and they're all pretty good. Leadbelcher is then my metallic of choice for doing those dark steel parts. You want to take your time, make sure you don't miss any of those bits. And you may think, how could you miss bits? There's not that many tricky bits on it. There's just a grappling hook, some grenades and some knives. Well, his wrists are wrapped in old dog tags from all of the guardsmen that he's slain, which is kind of terrifying. But then things like this, all of his belt buckles, obviously we'll have metal clasps going around, so you need to go around and find all of those. Don't forget that his boots are metal, and of course his big blades. And for me, I decided to build the one with the night vision goggles over his face, as I'm a huge fan of Splinter Cell. It's one of the most iconic looks for my childhood is that, so I went for that. There's actually 3 different ways of doing it. You can have it like this, you can have it up on top of his forehead, Or you can have it off and he's just got his bare head, and then you can maybe stick the night vision goggles on his belt or something. After that, we moved over to Retributor Armor Gold, and there's only really 2 bits of detail that are gold. There's his belt buckle, and then all of the bits on his fancier knife. The fancy knife. Where did the fancy knife come from? How many orc knives do you know have gold sheaths? And this isn't my creative choice to make these parts gold for this knife. This is the way they are in the picture. Volupus Pink was used to put a quick coat inside of his mouth, just to give his tongue and his gums a little bit of colour. Blood Angels Red was used for the smoke grenades, just to make them stand out a little bit. He's got 1 extra spare one still mounted on the strap on his chest, and then 1, of course, on the ground. One of the things I did with the old Snikrot model, which I really liked, was that I didn't put his backpack on. I put his backpack on a separate base and based it up and had some like shrubbery and stuff over the top of it to make it look as though he's stashed it and hidden it away as he goes and sneaks into a compound. Fortunately, that's not an option with this one. There's no sculpted back on him, which I was a little bit disappointed by. I liked having the option to do that. Seraphim Sepia was my shade of choice, and I applied this to every single part of the miniature, just from top to bottom, head to toe. It shades everything really nicely on this miniature. Gold, the lovely skin, even the browns and the blacks and greys, it's all getting it nicely shaded. This is it as it dries. And as you can see, it hasn't distorted the color too much. It's just brought everything into that like nice natural tone, which I think orcs belong there. Warboss Green was then the first color of choice to start highlighting the skin. The skin is going to be a 2-stage highlight. I think with orc skin, more than even power armor of Space Marines, I think you need to spend a little bit of time on the skin to make it pop. Definitely the focal point of all orc miniatures. Even him with his face covered up. You're going to notice his pointy ears and his defined abs. He's ready for summer. And as you can see, I'm not filling in all of the details. I'm not going in between the muscles or the shaded areas. I want to leave that nice Plaguebearer Flesh sepia washed areas as the perfect shadow for these kinds of tones. And as it gets to this stage, it looks a little bit flat, but that's why we need to come in with the second layer and the second highlight. And for that, it's going to be a Skarsnik Green. This is going to be a really light highlight. I'm going to come in and start around his mouth and show you the kind of touch highlights that I like to do with this kind of skin. So you can see it's just little lines across, leaving a fair spacing between them. Same thing along his ears. Just a few touch highlights along the bottom of the lobe and then up on the top. Doing little details like this will make it pop so much. Same thing across the tops of his biceps. It's just going to be little lines. Try and follow the natural flow of the shoulder, which I didn't show the best in that particular example. But when you always put them on, it seems really scary. It's like it's too bright, it doesn't work, that's not the right color. Your brain is tricking you because the paint isn't dry yet. It's a different color when it dries, and as you can see now, when the paint is dried, it's not nearly as harsh a transition. It blends in really nicely, but does give you that nice highlight. Mechanicus Standard Grey is the color I went for to layer up all of those grey parts. I know this is a base paint and it's quite dark, but like this is Snikrot. He's supposed to be in the shadows, hunting down his prey, getting rid of heavy weapon teams without the opponents knowing, or you know, taking out an enemy tank, or coming in to get the war boss or a VIP or something, and he never misses his mark. So being very careful to highlight these kind of details, because you got to paint around all those silver parts, the brown, the bullet, everything. But it's a larger part than you think, so it is actually quite easy to get around those parts. There's all of the grey applied. Time to move on to Corvus Black. And with this, we are just going to layer up all of the black parts. So his boots. Never forget the stomping boots. And then all those straps, like I said, the straps holding on his backpack. Around his waist. A few other bits and pieces like that we're just going to highlight with the Corvus Black. Corvus Black having that touch of grey. I've always said it's a great highlight for black paint. It still registers in your eyes as black, but isn't quite as dull and shadowless as black. But of course, on a scheme like this with all the grey tones, it really blends in, and it really sets the tone for the kind of urban camo that you like. Leadbelcher was then brought back in to highlight all the metallics, and that's both the silver and the gold. So for instance, on the blade, as you can see, I'm just going along the sharp serrated edge and then up along the cutting edge with those kind of downward strokes. That's to give the impression that, of course, that bit is razor sharp, but the rest of the knife isn't particularly well maintained. It's going to leave that little bit of that dirt or rust or whatever, a little bit across the top where it's been scuffed coming in and out of sheaths or in and out of Space Marines. Things like the dog tags, you're just going to do a little bit of light dry brushing, really. You only have to do the bits that's pointing upwards. The bit underneath his arm is in shadow, so they're fine, the colors that you have left them. And then go in with the belt buckles and the mask. And like I said, I do all the gold in the same color for highlight. It works a treat and helps all those parts blend together really well. Really starting to get somewhere with him. Screaming Skull was then brought in to highlight all of the skulls. We didn't highlight the rope though, he's on the backpack. We just left that the skeleton horde washed with sepia. Didn't touch it again for the entire thing. It's like a background detail. Works really well. And other things like he's got a bit of bone work on that fancy knife on his back. And then of course I went in and painted his teeth. One coat of Screaming Skull. They're really small and they're hidden behind his mask. If you're using some of the other heads and they're more pronounced, I haven't actually paid attention to see how much more pronounced they are, but they might become more focal without the mask, which means you might want to spend a little bit more time in them. Maybe do a dark khaki color and then do the tips of them with bone, but that's up to you. After that, I got a pure white paint, whatever pure white paint you like the most, and I basically covered up all of the glowing eye lenses on this model. And on the examples that they have on the box art and stuff, all of these lenses are different colors. Maybe it's like heat mode or whatever, different kinds of mode. Like I said, I am a huge advocate for Sam Fisher and Splinter Cell. So for my ones, I brought them all into the green spectrum to look like the proper night vision goggles. So Crander's Green works a treat for this. I would love to run some sort of scenario, a special scenario boarding action game in the dark, and have certain characters only be able to see certain distances because they don't have any night vision goggles or they just have a torch and stuff like that, but characters like this can just kind of fight through it all. The smoke grenade was done exactly the same as the red on his pouch. Nothing crazy happened, and when I got to the smoke, it looked so good with the spray black and the dusting of grey that all I did was dry brush it white at the end and it worked perfectly. Here is a few finished shots of Snikrot. I hope you guys enjoyed it. A huge thank you to Games Workshop for sending out this review copy so I was able to paint it up on my channel for you guys. And yeah, I've got more orcs later in the week, so I hope you're excited for that. And there we have it, guys. Snikrot is finished and ready to sneak into the back lines of the enemy forces and cause utter havoc and destruction. I cannot wait to field him along with my 20 orc commandos and see what kind of mischief he can get into. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like. Likes really do help. They push the video out to more people, which helps grow the channel immensely. If you're not already subscribed to me, it would also mean the world to me. So 2 seconds out every day and hit that subscribe button. About 60 to 70% of people who watch my videos are not subscribed. So that's a huge number of people that would help me out so much. And if you have any questions about what I did in this video or any other video, please put it in the comments below and I will get back to each and every one of you guys. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end of the video. I'll see you in the next one.